Hi everyone, it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back to the Aquatic Industry Insider. One of the things I wanted to quickly talk about today was a podcast that I heard. One of the podcasts I started recently is a fashion podcast from a commentator at Puck News, which is an independent news service similar to Substack, where people will pay a fee to self-publish their own articles, but this is a conglomerate of some different types of industries, so fashion and sports and finance and business. I listen to some other fashion podcasts, so this is not a big stretch. And the speaker or the host of the podcast said something about swimming lessons that really stuck with me, and that's kind of what I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about in this video.
Hey everyone, I hope you had a good weekend. I am back in Los Angeles. I landed Saturday morning from the Savannah College of Art and Design's annual fashion show. I took my kid to these hilariously exclusive swimming lessons at a friend's house. It's called Swim to Bill, if any of you live in LA and have a small child. It's the kind of thing that I personally would never strive to do, but I jumped on the bandwagon very quickly when my friend was hosting. So hopefully my kid will be able to swim unaccompanied by the end of this week. I'll give you an update.
So I don't know how you feel about that clip. This was just off the cuff comments at the very start of the podcast before digging into the topic of the podcast itself. But the thing that really stuck with me, as I've listened already to 10 or 12 podcasts from this host is talking about high fashion. So they're talking about couture, they're talking about expensive dresses, they're talking about expensive pants and purses and footwear. That is the genesis of this podcast. One of the other episodes I listened to on Saturday was a discussion about how it is, quote, reasonable that pants in high fashion brands could cost $800 or $900. That based on inflation and wageflation, that it is, quote, reasonable. Now, for me, that's a lot of money, but I'm not here to comment on that because different people make different amounts of money, and what is acceptable to one person is not acceptable to another. But I thought it was really interesting that she commented on the exclusivity of these lessons. And when I went to the website for Swim to Bill, so the company name is literally Swim to Bill, Bill being the swim instructor who started this business. The cost of the swim lessons is $500 US per child for 8 30-minute lessons. So 30 minutes being the standard swimming lesson that we often see with small children, 8 being a pretty standard session. The only difference with this particular instructor is it is small groups, so it's a limit of 3 children. He talks on his website about the need children have to be social, and so he doesn't recommend one-on-one lessons. He does recommend a couple kids of comparable age or siblings or friends. And then it is consecutive days. That is his framework. And it is located at your home. So this was located in Los Angeles, California. You can already draw your own conclusions about pricing and costs if you live in that particular area. But I thought it was really interesting from an anthropological perspective or a social and cultural perspective to notice somebody who has, I would imagine, significant disposable income to spend on designer clothing, couture, other high-end brands, or an $800 pair of pants isn't really noticeable. And then they're concerned about the $500 cost of swimming lessons. Now, the word exclusive was used, not expensive, so maybe that's not what the speaker meant, but I find it really interesting generally if we talk about the culture of fitness. High-end fitness, if you belong to a nicer yoga studio, hot yoga studio, a spin studio, bar studio, anything like that is an exclusive or more expensive fitness. So $100, $200, $300 a month. Certainly that's not a price point that everyone can afford, and there is always the sort of children's discount that people expect. You go to a restaurant, kids eat for free, or it's a nominal cost, and so that carries over a lot to children's fitness, including swimming lessons, where there is this thinking that children's lessons should be inexpensive or cheap, or they're not worth anything. I think it's really interesting to see this person, and I don't know them well. I've just followed their podcast for 12 or 14 episodes, to see them comment on the exclusivity, which I interpret as their concern about the expense of private, basically semi-private swim lessons in their friend's pool, $500 US for 8 lessons of 30 minutes to teach them how to swim. And they don't say it's not worth the investment. They certainly say, you know, I hope my child knows how to swim by the end of this session. But I find it really interesting that we're doing such a bad job in our industry to really reinforce the value that comes out of swimming lessons. Essentially, I just wanted to ask your opinion. If you think it is reasonable or unreasonable when I think to private fitness, private trainers, private classes. So I haven't paid for a personal trainer, but I have seen their rates run easily $60, $70, $80, $90 an hour up, if not more. Private fitness classes, so if you wanted to host a private spin class, a private yoga class for you and all of your friends, that could be upwards of $100, $150, depending on the studio and the instructor fee. More if you're living in an expensive area like LA or New York. So I find it really interesting, and this video is not to throw rocks at the person, but I think there is something that we are doing wrong in the aquatic industry where we are truly not advertising the value that comes out of something like this, the investment. And I know I've rolled my eyes when I've seen posters at my yoga studio talking about the investment for a particular workshop or a particular session. I'm not necessarily a fan of that type of business lingo, but I do wonder what we need to be doing in swimming lesson culture and advertising our swimming lessons, even if it's only, quote unquote, at a municipal or nonprofit facility, to be able to convey to our customers, to our users, to our parents, the value is your child's life. The value is some layer of protection that they can recover themselves in deep water, that they can swim to the side, that does not remove your responsibility as a parent to watch them in the water, but it does provide a life skill that's never going to leave them. Whether you think that's a life skill that should be earned at a cost that is not accessible to everyone is a completely different conversation. But I thought it was just so interesting to be listening to this podcast, which is otherwise talking about fashion brands and handbags and shoes and pants that are thousands, hundreds of dollars. And this individual who, within that realm of having the money to spend on those items, does not consider or is not enthusiastic about the investment in their child's swimming. And again, this is not a value judgment as a parent or as a person or somebody whose industry and their preferences are working in the high fashion space. I think it speaks to us as an aquatic industry and what we're doing or not doing, as the case may be, to really promote the value that come from our swim lessons. It's not just a badge, it's not just a report card, it's not just a social time, it is a life skill that a lot of people need. So that's all I had for today. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, please let me know in the comments below whether you agree, disagree, what you think we can be doing better as an industry. Subscribe to be updated as to when new videos come out. That is going to be the best way to know when videos come out because the schedule is still pretty erratic and I'm not able to commit to one video every week. So I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.